The safe space. Because I want all of your love. They're right that you really can't see up here, so it doesn't help at all. Okay, that looks really stupid. I'm Jerry Belich. As Nels kindly introduced me, I'm a professor of game design. I do a lot of different things. I do engineering and electronics, and narrative design, and fiction, all that. But I especially love talking about alternative controllers and the kind of prototyping and design that goes along with that. So we're going to be talking about how that brings humans and machines together. Now, it's not exactly like this. When you're playing video games, you've got your keyboard, your special rectangle with the tiny, smaller squares on it, and those are nice and everything, but I think they're a little mundane, it's a little overdone. I think we forget about how great the different, all the immense permutations of forms there are to interact with things in the world. So, what I want to try and cover today, 4 quick things. We've got the, who's this for? Why should you care? What exactly are alternative controllers? I know some of you may be more familiar. I know last year Robin Baumgartner had a lot of great stuff to talk about. And why it's a valuable skill as a designer. And most importantly, I want to actually provide you a path where you can get started quickly. And that's the hardest part about all this. We're talking about a new way to design, getting physical instead of digital, and so many other things. So who is this for? Basically, if you are a person that contributes to creating and designing experiences, like this is valuable to you. If you are somebody that spends the majority of your time learning and designing in front of a digital screen, so sitting in front of that magic rectangle and spending hour after hour after hour, and I know that I have to do that a lot, so it's actually particularly refreshing when I get to break away from that and actually use my hands, but still get the magic of the digital world. If you are just looking for a new prototyping method that encourages collaboration and just kind of a hands-on way to design, or if you just want to start collecting a lot of weird crap and have a great excuse to never actually throw anything away. This is a really, really excellent thing to do, because you can make a controller out of everything. The chairs that are here, I can make a controller out of all of you. But don't do that without consent, and don't hurt people. So what exactly are alternative controllers? Well, they can range from creating custom interfaces to existing games, and this is one place that I like to start with a lot of my students. So you may recognize this. This is Luftrausers by Vlambeer. You are a little bullet hell jet, and you go left, you go right, you accelerate, and you fire. So I wanted to make an interface. For this that really embodied the experience of being the jet. Not to make it necessarily easier to play or harder to play, but to really get into it, because something felt a little weird to me about sitting playing this ultra intense game. What do we do when we get more intense playing a game? We freeze. We just. I was like, no, I want to get my body into it. I want to embody the play that I am enjoying. So, I mean, the cardboard wings are a must, obviously. But on each one of those wings is a tiny capsule. And 2 little wires come out of the capsule, and there's a ball bearing in that capsule. So when you tilt it, the ball bearing rolls away. When you tilt it back, it rolls into the wires, and that completes a circuit. It is the exact same principle as a button, which opens and closes a circuit. So now, I could tilt one way or another, and it would send the left and right keyboard commands to the computer. So, Now, I needed to fire, obviously, so I got a capsule arcade button, put it in one hand, but it didn't feel right, it didn't have that symmetry that I imagined a jet would have. So I got another capsule, put it in my other hand. But I could still press either one and fire, and the fact that it wasn't actually constraining that was breaking the experience for me, so I put them in a series. Now all of a sudden, I had to commit to that behavior, and it felt really good. It just felt right. And there was a little pedal on the ground so I could accelerate. Weirdly enough, I actually was playing better using this. And you can't see it in the photo, but I did have a silk scarf. So moving on, there's also building custom interfaces for your own games. And this is one thing that I really want to encourage, especially this crowd. A lot of you are either game designers or developing on games, working on creative teams. And this is just such a great way to understand your own work, even if you're not creating it to sell. So Butt Sniffing Pugs, this is a fabulous game. It was an alternative controller GDC Game Developers Conference a few years ago. And what I particularly love about what they did and why this was really, really smart is not because they're selling an experience that you actually won't necessarily be able to buy, but they're cutting through the noise. If you've been to GDC, if you've been on the expo floor, there are so many thousands of people. And they are busy, and it's loud, and it's crazy, and they might be trying to get back to their NVIDIA booth with their suits and their little ties, and working really hard, and frankly, they're super scared of alternative controller stuff. Like anybody in a suit is just like, I don't want to look stupid, better not touch it. And the beauty of this was they made it super approachable. They made it not only fun to watch people play, so people sticking their face in the butt of the pug, which is one of the mechanics of this game, that got people to slow down a little bit and take a little notice. And of course, then those people might stick around a little longer, and then they might actually play it. And as a result, years down the road, when it gets released, they're gonna think about that and go, I kind of want to support that. That was really great. I have this very happy memory. And suddenly they are being remembered in a way that many of the other experiences at GDC would probably not hook them. In this case, they actually took an optical mouse, ripped it open, used the guts, so it was already a functional piece of equipment. They just repurposed it for this, so I think that's brilliant. This is a 1951 K-part television set that I got off eBay, and working with my friend Victor, and the goal here was I wanted to take all of those ways that people had to interface with the television many, many, many years ago, all those frustrating things. So having to hit the side of the television to get the signal to clear, messing with the rabbit ears, adjusting the vertical hold, all the little knobs. So we wired up every aspect of that used to be the pain in the ass version, and made that part of the mechanics of the game itself. So here you can see, this is hooked up to a small computer running a Unity application with lots and lots of cool television shaders that we developed. And here you hit the side of the TV, and it is interacting with these vignettes that are playing on the screen. If you tune it, there's a radio there, and it tunes to different stations and all that. So it's these tiny little puzzles that you could go back and forth with. I did not have to write any communication code to get all of the controller stuff talking to Unity. And the reason is I used a microcontroller emulating a human interface device. And that is how I try to approach teaching people how they can actually get started really, really quickly with creating things that can talk to digital components. So human interface device, a HID emulator. So this is an example of a game one of my students just made for Unicorn Dash. And the goal was that they were supposed to take a game and just make an interface that embodied the actions of the game. And what I love about this is you start to realize just how much enjoyment you can get out of an experience without even getting to the content. If you're only thinking about the content, you are only thinking about half of the equation. This is a great one. This is a Robin Baumgartner, because he's a genius, called Broom for Improvement. He made this during a workshop I did at Feral Vector this year, and the inside of the tape is lined with copper. And so you spin it around, and the strips of copper on the broomstick will count how many times it rotates. So you're sitting there furiously trying to rotate it around and get as many as possible. It's very, very funny, and it's a pun which makes it extra, extra good. It's kind of a multiplier when it comes to how good a game is. And of course, standalone games. It doesn't necessarily need this other component. Microcontrollers are computers. They're just smaller computers. So this is the first game that I developed. It's called Choose a Charm. Some of you may have played it, but basically it is distilling interactive fiction stories into a fun little box. And of course, Robin's Line Wobbler, which is absolutely genius and one of my favorite examples of just amazing games. And for those of you that don't know, that long strip is basically a one-dimensional dungeon crawler. So just some other really quick examples. We've looked at custom controllers, hijacking existing controllers, recontextualizing controllers. There was an all-control game where they remotely controlled the motors of an Xbox controller and then used those as your avatars when trying to push other Xbox controllers out of a circle. It was so weird. It's so good though. And like arcade cabinets, especially in Japan, there's amazing these kind of one-off seeming interfaces that have been developed, like the table flipping game where you just flip the table. It's so good. They have one in Logan's Arcade in Chicago, so check it out. And installations and playful performance. So I think there's a lot of places for this to get involved in both live theater, and I'm sure you've all been in a space like a museum, even an airport, where they're making projections of a pond, and you splash through the pond, and it's very nice. So there's so many options, but basically, if you're having a lot of fun building something weird, and it might be a little bit dangerous, you're probably making an alternative controller. So, or if you're trying to procrastinate on finishing your talk, you might be building an alternative controller. So, why is this useful? Why is this valuable? Does anybody else learn by doing? You may be a kinesthetic learner, right? Now, I also look at this as kind of a spectrum. Maybe that is not your primary form of learning, but you probably would still benefit from it, even if you're 70% the other way. Well, then where's that 30%? So I think alternative controllers really help provide a great design lens, a new way to see and understand the work that you're building, especially as more and more designers creating very, very interesting experiences that break out of regular digital spaces. So there's 4 kind of categories I like to think deeply about with any experience that I'm trying to design. We've got form, function, content, and context. And I think if there's any one of these things that's really, really missing, it can just drag the whole thing down. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit in the context of like Choose-a-Tron and Line Wobbler. So with Choose-a-Tron, the form is this physical story, but it's unlike a book because it's printing out in real time. So you end up with this physical artifact. With Line Wobbler, you have this small box. You have a very familiar artifact that you're interfacing with. The spring kind of from behind the door that you probably tripped on when you were a kid. And this long string of flexible lights that stays within the space. And we've got the function. So for Choose-a-Tron, it's about a story with reader agency. It's not an adventure, but it is your adventure. With Line Wobbler, it's not just about you playing, but it's about entertaining the spectators and the people that are around you, and to allow your imagination to kind of take in this abstract form and apply like your own kind of feelings and emotions to that. And give a sense of accomplishment very, very quickly while making failure a lot of fun. Got content for Choose-a-Tron, just lots of different short stories of many, many different genres. So it's very much a platform, something that a lot of different kinds of people can contribute to. For Line Wobbler, you've got this hero forging ahead in a singular path, these discrete levels that you're moving through, getting a little bit harder every time. And it's not unlike kind of a lot of the adventure games that people play, where maybe you have more dimensions to move through, but you really know that there's one direction that you're meant to go. Now, for Choose-a-Tron, the context of it is reading is usually a solo experience, especially for adults. But because of the fact that there's no way to cheat, because of the fact that once you make a decision, it's printed permanently, there's a lot more weight to that. And people start to panic about that. And I found it actually really got people playing together and reading together. Even strangers waiting in line, reading over the shoulder and being like, no, 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 don't do that. Which is very, very funny. And with Line Wobbler, it's a game you play in the dark, but not alone. You're always with other people. And it's not just a game that's in a place, but it's a game that is a part of a place. Every installation of a Line Wobbler is completely different because of the form of that particular space. So, when NES emulators came out on like Android phones for the first time, I was blissed out. I was convinced that I was going to spend all of my spare minutes throughout the day when I had nothing else going on, playing Mario and revisiting all of these other games that I really, really love. But turns out this experience is incredibly broken. So why? Why is this absolutely no fun? It still has the same function, right? Form, function, content, context. It still has the function. The function is to provide me a distraction and some entertainment. It still has the same content. Mario's still there, the coins are still there, the Goombas are still there. But it has bad form. Its form is all wrong. The interface is on the very screen I'm trying to play, which definitely does not help. And there's no tactile feedback. I can't actually feel what's going on. Did I press the button? Did it register? I'm not really sure. And also, this is before tilting was a thing for controllers. And I think a lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you played Nintendo as a kid, it didn't help, but it felt right. Because we embody play with our bodies. It makes sense, right? So now you're moving a screen around while you're touching it, and you have no way of knowing if it's happening. This is a very broken experience. 2 out of 4 check boxes are not being checked properly. So, what else is wrong with this? The context is broken too. And maybe this image is not what you're used to or what you remember. This is what Nintendo wanted it to be, but Mom and Dad never did that with us. But a lot of the context here is really difficult because it's so deeply seated in nostalgia. It's who you were playing with, where you were playing. This is also novel. These games were the best that there was. But everyone, even players, have gotten more savvy about game design and what works and what doesn't. So how do you get people to play this stuff again? Well, when Nintendo came out with the Wii, you can see that they really thought about the form of their controllers and that they wanted to bring back and recontextualize some of what had already been done. So they had these forms that are mysteriously like both controller sets of all the classic games that they wanted you to buy again. So they redefined the form, and they preserved the context. But they went a little beyond that too. They didn't just make controllers that felt right. They also thought about the fact that we are not in the same place that we once were. The games are going to show a little bit of their age. We might not have the same amount of free time. We may not have the same amount of skill and don't want to put the time in to do that. So they thought about that, and it's like, okay, well, what features can we add to actually allow us to revisit that content, to revisit our childhoods, to revisit that nostalgia, and to recontextualize that to now, to something that we can consume again. And all of a sudden, I'm actually playing Nintendo games again. I got my SNES Classic, and it's fantastic. I love it. So I think alt control design is especially good at helping put a lens on the form and context of experiences. But I do think it's valuable for all four of these different things. Now, a renaissance is coming. There are a lot of very practical reasons to get into hardware, to get into electronics, to take what now we say is like, of course everyone should learn how to code at least a little. Well, I think it's true for this too. So we've got custom fabrication. Here we've got 3 different techniques. A CNC routing machine that's carving 3-dimensional pieces of wood, an actual 3D printer, so creating unique forms out of nothing, and even laser cutting, cutting 2D material and then constructing 3-dimensional things out of it. Imagine a day where you don't just sell your game on Steam, but you send the fabrication files so your player at home can print out their brand new controller and actually play that game the way you really want them to play it. Escape rooms. I think a lot of people here have probably played some escape rooms. They've gotten pretty big. Now the first designs of escape rooms, they're a little bit more basic. It was like, how many different kinds of locks can I buy? And then like, how many different boxes can I stick them on? Oh crap, I have to buy all new things because it turns out people break everything. And it's like people sifting through information, like stuff on the walls, like all over the place. But I think we can do better than that. With alternative controllers, with new kinds of interfaces, we can start building some of that magic and create that narrative that isn't so easily broken. So I actually opened an escape room last month called Utopia Room in Minneapolis. This is the only image I can show, for obvious reasons, but I wanted to show this because when you enter the room, this is all there is. There's nothing else. There's nothing behind you or that you're not seeing except there's one display on the wall that has a clock. But this is it. But by the time you are done with this experience, it is 100% transformed. And yet it's also fully automated. Things are opening on their own, things are moving around, players are getting indications of what they need to do next, dynamic lighting, dynamic sound, all of these things. And as a result, we're able to craft an experience where nobody gets left behind. People aren't sitting there trying to figure out what it is that they should be doing next, and yet they're still getting challenged, and they're still able to collaborate with each other. Virtual reality, I think that's turning out to be a thing, as we've seen today even. And we're working with physical space. Virtual reality is about space. It is about our bodies. It is about removing that abstraction, adding intelligent components, adding alternative controllers to that to make it even more accurate, to provide more haptic feedback. That's only going to make that experience more compelling and allow for more permutations. So this is an example for Ghost Dentist VR. We actually set it up upstairs. Small group of us created it on Train Jam last year, and the idea is that you are a ghost that has a dental practice, and of course you've got patients you have to help. They're alive, they're fine, but then you possess them and then you do your own dental work. The Hannibal Lecter mask that I designed for it, it basically does two things. It provides you one-to-one tracking on how open and closed your mouth is, and then there are embedded vibrational motors, so of course, when you're drilling your teeth, it, vibrates through your teeth. That is exactly the response I wanted. And there's so many other things. Alternative controllers allow you to, again, you can get work making stuff for museums or companies or interactive spaces. Heck, you could even start making toys and other kinds of games or things that help people. That's possible. There's so much money that goes into creating very specific things for physical therapy and stuff like that ends up costing tens of thousands of dollars. When you get a group of people together and you hack away at some nice, cheap, accessible prototyping stuff, and bam, you can knock that out for $200. That's pretty great. And even just making accessible controllers for people to play the games that they want to be playing. Everybody deserves to have those experiences. And I think this is a great way to do that. So how do you get started fast? So this is the part I struggled with this talk because it turns out it is really hard to figure out how to teach everybody how to do electronics and hardware and all that stuff in 20 minutes. So what I decided on was, first we'll talk a little bit about, like I mentioned, human interface devices. And to be clear on what that is, basically means I can have this little microcontroller and I can pretend to be a keyboard or a mouse or a gamepad or a joystick or a touchscreen and connect to just about any computer system, even your phone, and it's just going to know how to talk to it. So I could, if you plug in a USB keyboard to your iPhone or Android phone, it will just work. It's going to work on the keyboard. So if you have a tiny device that you can hook up any amount of inputs and whatever else you want to and plug it in, you don't have to worry about the communication. You just figure out how you want people to interact with it and then spit out the stuff that you need to spit out to talk to that experience that you have. Now this looks super complicated, and I know that, and this is the hardest part, is the fear. And I have a lot of students that I teach in an alternative controller class, and they are terrified on day one. In fact, the first couple of weeks are a little rocky. But after that, they start doing incredible game design work. Stuff that I think goes above and beyond most of the game design students I have in traditional game design learning. This is usually what I use as a teensy LC. It stands for low cost, but it is able to very easily emulate all of those things that I was talking about. This sheet here is called a pinout. It looks like maybe chaos right now, all the gray stuff. That means it's a digital input, that's binary, true, false, 1, 0. And then there's yellow ones. It can do touch sensing, like Makey Makeys, if you know about those. So what I'm getting at is, I have put together a website in the last couple of weeks. I'm still working on it. But basically, I wanted to start giving people a very clear path. Yes, there are many microcontrollers out there. There are many different tools, and there are many different right ways to do something. There is actually not really any right ways. There's just ways. But what I know is that you need to have a little bit of that frustration, but also that success in order to make this work. So if you go to the website that I've set up, and I'll give you the link for that, I've got a nice little shopping list. You can get all the basic things that you need. And then after that, step by step of like, dump the code on that I've already written for you, so you don't even have to write a line of code before you can make something act like a keyboard. I help you hook up your first button, get it plugged in so you can get that first like dopamine rush of success, making it happen. And I know you can all do that. You're all very, very clever, I know that. So this is the URL, jerrytron.github.io/alt-control. This is something I'm going to keep adding to. If this is something that is useful to you or you have questions about it, then please get in touch with me. I'm going to be more motivated if people are breathing down my neck and trying to actually do the stuff I'm trying to teach. So that's really helpful. But I want this to be something people can actually start doing. Because I think that everybody here is capable of it, first of all. But second of all, this is useful. A new way to approach design. A new way to be engaged with your design. I don't know about you, but I get real sleepy when I'm like at hour 8 in front of a computer screen. But when I'm actually like moving in space and I'm cutting things and I'm wiring things and all that, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to stay awake. It's also really, really fun to work with other people, to work out designs, to actually collaborate in ways that aren't just Dropbox and GitHub and syncing changes and then like there's collisions and then you have to send it back. It's a mess. Point is, frustration plus success is learning. And it is a little bit of hard work. Nothing's ever going to be just 100% of a cakewalk or you're not challenging yourself. But as long as I can get you to the success, as long as you can get to that success, then you get the learning. So these are some of my students. They were making a bear that explodes. And they were very happy about it. So, and I was happy about it. I think it's great. But, you know, you can do it. I mean, winners make all controls. I think that's obvious. So thanks very much for listening. I'm Jerry Belich. That's how you get a hold of me. That is the link.